Hey Stitch Cutie, this is the video tutorial to make your adorable Happiness is mug rug in the hoop of your embroidery machine. So first, let's talk about all the materials you want to have ready. So you have your pattern, you can set that aside. First, let's talk about the thread colors we're using. I'm using all Sulky 40 weight rayon threads. This beautiful yellow gold color is 0567. This beautiful blue is 1253. And then this green that you know I use all the time, I just love it, is number 1177. And then this super fun pink is 1307. And then I always like to have my white on hand. It's 1001. You can see I use this spool all the time. So let's set those aside. And you're going to want to have a cute little jar that you're going to put your applique pieces in. So there's two ways that you have your pieces. One, you're a member of the club where you get your kit every month. So everything comes pre-fused and laser cut for you. It's pre-fused with heat and bond light. So the pieces in your kit we're going to set aside into our bucket. If you want to go on and peel the fusible off, you can go on and do that. And I'm going to peel them and put them in the jar in order of how I'm going to use them. So the last ones I'm going to use are my pink flowers. My buttons are, of course, last as well. And then my heart, my green piece, which I love when I have a little seam like that. Because look, you don't have to bend it. You just start ripping. It's awesome. I love that. And then this little heart right here is going to go on the back of our mug rug. So absolutely adorable. So we're going to set those aside right here. Now let's talk about the fabrics that you'll have prepared. So again, if you get the kit, you'll have, this is the back of your mug rug. This is the front of your mug rug. Look at this, super cute with all the sweet little phrases on it. And then, of course, you have your batting. Now, when you cut, I definitely recommend cutting your selvage off first and then cutting from there. I know that I have more than enough fabric, so I just cut it real fast. So I would cut your selvage off first to make sure you don't make a mistake in your measurements. So the pieces that we'll need first are going to be the back of our mug rug and the sweet little heart. So you're going to load the file for the back of your mug rug, and I'm going to load this yellow gold color 0567. And what the machine is going to do in the first step, you'll have a medium tearaway stabilizer in your hoop. The very first step of your file is going to stitch a rectangle right here so that you know where to put your background fabric. So let's go on and put that in place. Again, you will not have your selvage there. I just cut real quickly. So we'll ignore that and we'll get it in place. If you want to use tape, you certainly can. You all know I usually use like home office tape because I like having a holder. But I really ultimately like using medical tape the best when I'm doing this. But it doesn't have a holder. So don't laugh at me, but I have put it on my tape holder. It doesn't go all the way down, but it still rolls and I have my cutter, so I'm hands-free. So a funny tool that you can have ready. I've got to find a little holder for my medical tape that rolls like that. If you guys know of one, let me know in the comments. So we're going to put this back on and prompt our machine to begin stitching once we load our 0567, the yellow gold color. So we'll be back in a minute to iron our first applique piece on. Now, while that's stitching, let's talk about some of the other tools that we're using. In front of me, you can see my little hoop is coming towards me. I always like to have my Steady Betty right in front of the embroidery machine so I don't have to walk away to my ironing board to iron. This is just a regular Steady Betty. It's the gray on both sides. There are some that have the wool on one side, which are great too. And then I have my favorite iron right here. It's the little Travel Steam Fast iron. And I love working with this iron because it's great for getting in the little nooks and crannies of your hoop. I have my favorite little trimming scissors. I have these, which are great for cutting fabrics. They're the Karen K. Buckley scissors. There's 3 different sizes. This is the large size. Any of the 3 sizes work just fine. And then my favorite needles. I haven't really been talking about the needles I use in my embroidery machine, but I'm excited that we're going to start carrying these because I think it does make a difference. Most machines come with the organ needles in them, and when you replace your needles, typically you buy kind of expensive needles, right? Well, our friends at Sulky have started carrying these, and they've had them packaged in this handy dandy little package, and I just love them. A lot of times when you're buying embroidery needles in the past, when you're buying this brand, Oregon Needles, you had to buy in bulk, like 100 of them. And I mean, you don't really need 100 needles, right? So this comes in a pack of 5. I just put a fresh needle on my machine. And let me tell you, when I was changing the needle, my favorite thing about these is see how they're pink at the top? And I'm always concerned when I'm putting my needle in that I don't have it all the way up into the machine. But this, you can know because it's colored at the top. See that pink instead of just being silver all the way? And it's also great if you have these types of needles for some of your other machines. They're colored as well. And so you'll know, oh yeah, pink's my embroidery. You'll just kind of get in the habit of knowing what needles are what. So those are some of the tools that I have ready. And now let's get ready to iron on our applique piece. You can see that our backing fabric is basted into place on our stabilizer, and we have this little heart. I just love it. So I'm actually going to turn my hoop sideways so I make sure I stay in the frame for you all. And we're going to take our heart. It's got the back peeled off, and we're going to put it right in place, and you'll see it fits perfectly. So the files that I digitize with and the files that I use on the laser are the exact same files, so the shape always remains consistent. And then if you're using the SVG files, we give you those exact files as well, so that when you're using your home electronic cutter, you have the perfect fit as well. So again, we're sticking with that 0567 gold color on our machine. We're gonna prompt it to begin, and in just a moment, you'll have a buttonhole stitched heart. And just like that, you have your gorgeous heart stitched on. See that perfect buttonhole stitch? I love it. And it takes less than a minute for that to stitch. Of course, it takes longer on the video because I take it on and off and show you all. So we're gonna set that aside now for a minute. I'll show you how to trim it a little bit later. But let's load another piece of stabilizer in our hoop. I have some really fun new stabilizers to try, but I just didn't have time to get that ready for this month. But hopefully next month in the tutorials, I'll have some new fun recommendations. But again, I like to try everything and test it before we ever say that we like it, right? So we're gonna put this on. Now in your machine, you're gonna load the file for the front of your embroidery. So we're gonna take our thread off. Another thing I love about the sulky threads is that you just pop the top like that and it stays so nice and tidy. Now what we're gonna be working with is the front of our mug rug. And I've added some quilting this month. So the very first color that you're gonna wanna start with is gonna be a color that you want the quilting to be on your background fabric. So the color for me that I like is 1253. So let's load that on, and the machine is going to stitch a rectangle for us to then put this in place. Now you have this beautiful rectangle that is going to be your guide. So the first thing you're going to put in place is your batting. Now normally we always include fusible batting. However, the last couple batches out of the mill have had a bit of issue with the fusible. And so we worked with our vendor and we picked out another batting that I actually really love the way this feels. And now I'm forgetting what it is. I'll put a comment in the video notes. I'm just blanking on what this is, but it's absolutely fantastic and I love it. So we're just gonna line it up. And then again, you will have your salvage cut off. I was lazy and didn't cut it off, but I know I have more than enough fabric. So when I line this up, I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to make sure my selvage isn't in that stitched rectangle. And then I'm also, because this is a very directional fabric, I want my words to be straight, right? So I'm going to eyeball that and make sure that my words are perfectly straight, right? And you can just kind of go like that and eyeball it and make sure that you're totally covered. So now you have that blue color on your machine. The machine is going to base this down, then do some beautiful quilting of straight lines. I really love the way straight lines work with these letters. And then it's going to do the first outline of our applique piece. So prompt your machine to go to the next step, and we'll be back in a minute to iron on our heart. Look at the beautiful quilting that you have now. So you have all this straight line quilting. They're about 1/4 inch apart all the way across your mug rug. Looks beautiful. And you have a heart right in the center. So we're going to place our first piece. So you are going to make sure that you line your pre-cut piece perfectly in place. So just iron this right on. See why I love this little iron? you can get right in your hoop, whereas if you had your big proper iron, it would be in the way of your hoop. So this little travel iron is fantastic. And we are going to do a color change, of course, to match the yellow. Now, I've stitched something else. Let's see if I have it right here where I can show you. I don't have it right here. Oh, yeah, I do. So I also want to show you what it's like. If you want to stitch your heart with a white thread, it looks just fine. This is one of my other samples I made, and it's with the white. And then let me show you what we did in this video tutorial. As you know, at the beginning, I used the yellow. So this is what the heart looks like with the yellow. So if you want to use white, you certainly can. But I'm going to use the gold. I love both the way they look. So this is number 0567. We'll load that. And then our machine is going to give us the outline, or I'm sorry, is going to buttonhole stitch our heart. So now your heart is stitched. Look how great that buttonhole stitch looks. Don't you just love it? Looks fantastic. Now you are going to be doing the piece right here. So we are going to load 1177, and we're going to prompt our machine to give us that outline of where we're going to put our green strip. Now it's time to iron the green strip in place. And a note about this piece. So in the kit or in your SVG files, we want to give you a piece that's going to make sure it's going to get into your binding. So with this, it's actually going to go off the edge of that stitched rectangle. See how it's going to go past the edge? That's no big deal. It's going to be caught in the binding, and I digitized that on purpose so that you make sure it is in the binding. It works a little bit differently on the zipper bag. So in that video tutorial, I'll show you how and why I digitized it the way I did. So again, we're going to iron this into place. We're going to keep the green thread on, and our machine is going to buttonhole stitch that little green stripe for us. And now this piece is stitched on. Now I do want to explain, yes, it's stitched right here, your buttonhole stitch, but I did that on purpose because otherwise your machine would cut a knot off and then start another knot and go to the end with another knot. This way your machine goes all the way around and just has to do one start and stop knot. So it's a little bit more efficient in your time and the use of your machine. So quick explanation on that. Now we are going to change our color in our machine to 1307. We're on the very last two steps. Now this pink color is going to do a quick outline of where we're going to put our two flowers, and then we'll be back to iron those on. See your two perfect little outlines of your flowers? Let's iron those on. So if you held your thread and you have a little string, just go on and do that. I like to hold my thread actually when a stitch begins. So we are going to put a flower on the left side right in place. Now you're going to want to make sure again that it's in all of the right places. And I'm just going to tap the ends of these two. And then just make sure my piece stays in the right spot. And now let's do this side. So we'll put it right in place. Don't you love having your pieces pre-cut? So you eliminate that tack down stitch. You're able to use the buttonhole stitch instead of a satin or a zigzag stitch. And I just love the look you get. And I think it's a lot faster, which is great. So again, keep that pink color or the color that matches your flower on your machine. And your machine is now going to do the buttonhole stitch and the final stitch with your embroidery files. And then we'll be back to trim and iron on our, or I'm sorry, not iron on, sew on our buttons. And voila! The front of your mug rug is completely stitched on your embroidery machine. Don't you love it? So let's take it out of the hoop. I'm going to set my hoop aside, and now let's trim. So I'm going to trim my back first, and it's really easy. We're just going to trim right along the outside, or actually kind of right on the stitched line. Let me get my rotary cutter. So I've put my little Olfa mat on top of my Steady Betty, and then I have my rotary cutter. And normally I cut just along the outside of these lines, but I decided if I cut right on the stitch line, then I don't have to battle the tearaway stabilizer as much. So, duh, that's a no-brainer. I've only been doing this, what, 3 years? You guys maybe figured that out before me. So, I'm just cutting right along the lines. And you can use the lines on your ruler to line it up if you want, but your machine is going to stitch exactly straight, so you don't have to worry. And this is going to be put in the binding anyway, so you're not going to have a worry with it not being square or anything like that. Now we're just going to remove our stabilizer. There we go. And there's a little bit in the heart, right? I'm just going to leave that because, you know, if you've watched the past videos, I don't like tearing out stabilizer. So I'm just going to leave it in the heart. It's not going to affect the use of my mug rug. And now let's trim the front. So again, I'm going to trim right on the stitched line. There we go. And so see that extra bit of green? Gone, just like that. And we'll trim right here. And actually, if you look at my lines, it is perfectly straight. So bravo to my embroidery machine for stitching so well. And our third line right here. And then the fourth line. So now it's time to sew our buttons on. So I am just going to use that yellow thread that I used in the embroidery machine to sew the buttons on. And I'm using a yellow thread because I want a little bit of fun contrast, right? Between the holes on my button, which I think is fun. So just trim my end off. There we go. And let's sew our buttons on. So again, our handy dandy little bucket with our 2 buttons. These are 1/2 inch white buttons. So you're just gonna place it. There is sort of like a top and a bottom. Like one side is a little more rounded. I know that seems a little picky, but I do think there's a top and bottom. We're gonna place it right over the flower center. And we're just gonna come through. Wow, look at that. I hit the hole on the first try. And we're just gonna sew it right on. There we go. And you are going through 2 pieces of fabric, so I do recommend that you use a nice sharp needle. Again, I'm using a tulip needle that I typically use for hand embroidery. It's got a nice sharp point. Let's see if I can get it's hard to aim for the hole again, isn't it? And then just right through. And because this is a larger needle, a lot of times I only do 2 little hoops on a mug rug because I don't use them in a rough way. But I am going to go through, I think, 4 times total because the button's a little bigger. And so to me, that just makes it feel like it needs a little bit more support. Let's see if I can aim. There we go. And I am going to knot off my thread. Technically, because there's the batting, you wouldn't see your knot, but I'm going to do a nice knot down here. And I'm just wrapping it and pulling it to the bottom. And there we go. And then that's how Mom does her knots. I'm never good at that. I'm going to do it my old-fashioned way one time too. I call it a slip knot. I don't know the technical name for this knot. But we do in our Stitch 365. We have a video of Julie sewing on buttons. And it's very helpful. She does it a little bit nicer than I do it. So I'm just going to knot my thread here. And let's sew our second button on. If you want to pull all this tearaway stabilizer out of each line, you certainly can. I typically leave my stabilizer and I use my mug rugs all the time at home, at my office. I give them as gifts and no one's ever had an issue. And then again, we're going to put this button right in place, centered right there. And we'll just come up. It's probably like watching paint dry, watching me sew this button on. But you can skip past this. If you're comfortable doing your button, skip right on past this if you want. And we'll go up. And again, I did 4 on the left side, so I'm going to do 4 times through my needle, or through my button on this side as well. Well, if I can aim again, there we go. So this is number 3. And I'm using just a single strand. If you want, you could use double. That would be no problem at all. And actually, you know what? I just thought of something that I'm going to do on this one that I remember Mom doing in a Stitch 365 that I thought was fun. And that is to add a little accent thread on the top. So let's do that. Why not? You can always customize and make this as fun as you want. So let me show you how we do that. So I'm going to take 2 pieces of thread. Let's see, that's a little longer than I need, but oh well. We have plenty of thread, right? And Mom actually used a 30 weight for this, so it's thicker thread. But I'm just going to use my embroidery thread. I think it's going to look just as cute. So the trick is here, we are going to thread both of these through the needle. Let's see if I can do them both at one time. I'm gonna lick them, trim them to the same length, and let's get it through the needle hole here. Did I do it? Nope. Okay, maybe we'll thread one at a time real fast. But what we're gonna do is add some little frillies coming through the other side, which I think will be fun. There's one. And now I'm just gonna hold that down, get the end of my second piece right there. Whoop, my threads got hit by the needle. Let's trim it. I lick my thread. I know a lot of people say don't do that. Mom and I both do. They say it can, like, you know, mess up your needle. I don't think that's really true. Maybe if you keep your needles for like way too long. Okay, so now I have these little strands. And so basically it's like I have 4 strands. So I'm gonna start from the top. And I don't have a knot in the end. I'm just gonna pull through a little. Keep it where I'm holding on to it. So see what we have here? And then I'm gonna go through the back hole, or the second hole, from the back. There we go. And now I'm just gonna tie these in a knot a few times on the front. And what we'll end up with is like what looks like the little insides of a flower. I'm gonna go in and do 3 knots. Why not? And tie it in, just a simple knot on the front. And then I'm just going to trim them about that long. So see, then you have fun little like insides of your flower. That's cute. I like that. Dude, you can kind of move them around where they look how you like them. So let's repeat that on this side. Ooh, I hope I have enough to tie. We'll try without having to. So you're gonna go from the front and go through, hold your threads. You can use more than 2 threads if you want to get a more poofy little flower center. And again, we didn't do this on the sample. I'm just sort of last minute deciding that I want to do this because I think it's cute. If I can just get it through the hole. Where's my hole? There it is. So we're just going to push that through. Whoop. There we go. And now we will tie it in a knot. Kind of hard because my thread's shorter now. Let's give myself a little more. There we go. A little more leeway. I'm going to trim my needle off. There we go. So I have enough space for my threads to go through. There we go. So we've tied 1 knot. We'll tie another. There's just no graceful way to tie a knot, you guys, with threads so short. There we go. And now we're gonna trim this to about the same length. There we go. And so look, I'm actually gonna make these a little shorter right here. There we go. So now you have fun little like flower centers. I think that looks cute. I'll link to the video too where Mom shows you how to do that a little bit more gracefully than I just did it. Put my needle back in the side. So now let's talk about how we're gonna finish the mug rug off. Get your threads out of the way. So you are going to put your back right on top of your front. And you just wanna make sure, again, you don't have any of those threads. And I like to line up where the bottom right matches. And that way I know that my little heart is in the perfect spot. So you can see we have a little bit more fabric than we need for the back, which is good. You know, always want to have more than not enough. And we can just trim this to the perfect size right now. And then what you'll do is, if you want, you can just baste it real quickly and then move on to your binding steps. Or you can, if you hold that together nicely, go on and put your binding on right away. And I will link to the binding tutorials that we have. Mom has great ones to show you. It's like a 3 or 4 part series that shows you how to prep your binding and go from start to finish. And the binding this month in the kit is this really fun diagonal. I love anything on the diagonal for binding. I think it just looks so cute. And it's got flowers that match the fabric. So you'll have a sweet little binding at the end. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have any questions at all, always reach out to us and we're happy to help. And happy stitching!